What's up? It's Smash Pass MMA. We're back to break down UFC 328, Khamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland. Starting with the early prelim opener, we got Jose Ochoa versus Clayton Carpenter. They're both coming off of their first two losses recently. Clayton Carpenter just lost to Jafel Fijo October 2025, and then before that lost to Tagir Ulanbekov in January 2025. Meanwhile, Jose Ochoa is 1-2 in his last three. Just lost to Asu Almabayev. Before that, he did KO Cody Durden. And then before that, he lost to Loner Kavanaugh via decision. I mean, Jose Ochoa has some submissions, and he has some straight just knockouts. Clayton Carpenter, a little bit more of a submission guy. He does have two head kick knockouts. So on the feet, Clayton Carpenter, going to be dangerous at that kicking range, but when it gets into the boxing range, Jose Ochoa is going to have a massive advantage, and I think that is going to be the difference maker. Clayton Carpenter also got, out of his two losses, one's a decision and one is a Kimura in his last fight against Jafel Fijo. And then Jose Ochoa, they were both decision losses, so hasn't been finished. I think that's going to be a factor as well. I'm going to go Jose Ochoa by round 2 KO. Moving on from there, we got DeJordan Santos versus Baysangur Susurkayev. So Baysangur Susurkayev probably going to win this one. So he's 11-0, coming off a recent KO over Eric McConaughey. Submitted Eric Nolan before that. KO, front kick to the body before that on Dana White Contender Series. Same thing, mostly a striker, but he has a recent submission, which shows he's not just like totally not training it at all. But we don't really know exactly how that's gonna translate. Meanwhile, DeJordan Santos, he's 11-2 off of a decision over Danny Barlow. Before that, he lost a decision to Osman Diaz. Before that, on Dana White Contender Series, he beat Will Curry. So he's 1-1 in the UFC. 2-1 if you count the Dana White Contender Series. 2 TKOs and lots of submissions. Baysangur has the one submission, lots of KOs. So if DeJordan Santos can take it to the ground, that might be his best advantage. But I'm going to go with a round 2 Baysangur Susurkayev KO. Moving on from there, we got Pat Sabatini versus William Gomes. William Gomes, 15-3. Coming off a win over Robert Ruchala by decision. Before that, he lost split decision to Hyder Emil. Before that, he won a split decision against Joe Anderson Brito. But out of his wins, he has, in all of his UFC fights, which are 6 fights, he has 1 majority decision, 2 split decisions, a TKO, a unanimous, and then a split decision loss. So all his fights are way too close, honestly. Those are way too close for your 6 UFC fights. Meanwhile, Pat Sabatini, more experience, 21-5. Basically, their KD, we got a 5.0 KD for William Gomes, 15-3. So 5 kills for every death. And then we have like a 4.2 KD for Pat Sabatini because he got 21 wins with 5 losses. But with that being said, he's on a 3-fight win streak. He just beat Jose Mariscal by unanimous decision. Before that, unanimous decision over Joe Anderson Brito. Before that, rear naked choke over Jonathan Pierce. Before that, he got KO by Diego Lopez, but that's pretty fair. Before that, he did beat Lucas Almeida, arm triangle choke. Before that, he got TKO'd by Damon Jackson. Also not the worst thing ever. Definitely should be the better grappler, but also has some ability to finish the fight with strikes as well, right? More likely than not, if the other person is a really good striker, he's probably going to lose. Like Diego Lopez isn't even that technical, but he just has so much power. That's probably where he's going to struggle. But against a William Gomes, who's losing split decisions to Hyder Emil, he beat Joe Anderson Brito in a split decision, but Pat Sabatini just beat Joe Anderson Brito unanimous decision. William Gomes is just making all of his UFC fights really close, and Pat Sabatini tends to either clearly win or when it's the top of the top, he loses. But he's not the top of the top, so that's kind of what you expect. So I'm going to go Pat Sabatini. I'm going to go round 3 heel hook. I'm going to say he's going back to his submission ways. Moving on from there, we got the main event of the early prelims, which is Roman Kopylov versus Marco Tulio. Marco Tulio is 14-2. He's coming off his second loss, which is a KO loss to Christian Leroy Duncan by spinning back fist and punches. Before that, he beat Tresean Gorb via TKO by punch, Ihor Pretoria by TKO, He had another Dana White Contender Series fight, which was the decision against Yusri Belgarui. He won 5 UFC fights if you count the Dana White Contender Series, and he's 4-1, or he's 2-1 if you don't count Dana White Contender Series. And he did lose by KO once early in his career in 2018, and before that, TKO, submission, and KO. In the UFC, he was doing really good. TKO and Tresean Gore, TKO and Ihor Pretoria, TKO and Matthew Letho Dukios. But the Christian Leroy Duncan loss, it's not the worst. Not that Christian Leroy Duncan's like the worst. So that's what Marco Tulio is going against him. Meanwhile, Roman Kopylov, 14-5. So way worse KD, like we were just saying. He's coming off a loss over Gregory Rodriguez, a decision loss to Gregory Rodriguez, which is pretty tough. I mean, to go 3 rounds with Gregory Rodriguez, lose and not get finished isn't, it's not that easy. Paulo Costa also lost a decision to. Before that, he TKO'd Chris Curtis by head kick. He split decision Cesar Almeida, which isn't a great look. He lost to Anthony Hernandez by rear naked choke. He KO'd Josh Fremd with a body punch. He head kick KO'd Claudio Ribeiro. He TKO with a body punch Punahele Soriano. He KO'd Alessio. He lost a split decision to Albert Duraev. He lost a rear naked choke against Carl Robertson, and that was his UFC debut. That being said, Marco Tulio just fought Christian Leroy Duncan and lost. If the Christian Leroy Duncan loss tells us anything, it might tell us that Marco Tulio's not good enough for the guys that beat Roman Kopylov. Because if we look at Roman Kopylov's loss, like Marco Tulio lost to Christian Leroy Duncan. Roman Kopylov lost to Gregory Rodriguez and Paulo Costa. Lost to Anthony Hernandez. Albert Duraev, Carl Robertson, definitely not as good, but that was when he first got in. That was back in like 2021. So he's never lost by strikes. He's only lost by submission. Marco Tulio, more of a striker. I'm going to have to go Roman Kopylov. I could see Marco Tulio, pulling it off. He might be the more technical striker, I guess. But I think it's like say Steve Erceg, right? Like a Steve Erceg versus like a Kai Kara-France. Steve Erceg's probably more technical striker. Kai Kara-France going to just like go after it a little bit more and maybe have a better understanding of like how to line up his own shots, but maybe just not a better overall technical ability, right? I think it's kind of similar here. Both pretty technical, but I think Roman Kopylov will just be able to put it on him a little bit more, I guess. Moving on from there, we got the opener of the regular prelims, which is Jim Miller versus Jared Gordon. Jim Miller, 38-19 with about 1 billion fights in the UFC. He has fought. Chase Hooper lost via unanimous decision. Very unimpressed with that fight. Beat Damon Jackson by submission, guillotine choke. To be fair, Chase Hooper is the kind of fighter that makes it tough for Jim Miller because he's such a good grappler. Bobby Green lost the decision. I think he could have won that fight. I think first round he rocked Bobby a little bit and then kind of chased that feeling for the rest of the fight when he should just stuck behind his game plan, used his grappling. But before that, he submitted Gabriel Benitez, KO Jesse Butler. He lost to Alexander Hernandez, did beat Donald Cerrone by guillotine choke. TKO'd Nicholas Mata. Before that, he KO'd Eric Gonzalez. Lost a decision to Joe Selecki. Before that, he lost a decision to Vince Pichel. Before that, he submitted Roosevelt Roberts by armbar. Before that, he lost a decision to Scott Holtzman. Beat Clay Guida by guillotine. Rear naked choke Jason Gonzalez. He did lose to Charles Oliveira by rear naked choke, but before that he beat Alex White by rear naked choke. He fought Dan Hooker and lost by KO knee. Before that he lost the decision to Francisco Trinaldo, who was pretty good at one point. Before that he lost the decision to Anthony Pettis and lost a majority decision to Dustin Poirier. Are we hearing these names? Do we understand how good freaking Jim Miller actually has been throughout his entire career? Before that he beat Thiago Alves. Before that he beat Joe Lozon by split decision. Before that, he beat Takanori Gomi by TKO. Before that, he did lose to Diego Sanchez on a decision, and he lost to Michael Chiesa by rear naked choke. Again, that's who usually gives him the hardest fight. He's a good grappler. Before that, he beat Danny Castillo on a split decision. Did lose to Beneil Dariush, unanimous. Did lose to Donald Cerrone by KO, but he submitted Yancy Medeiros. He armbarred Fabricio Comoz. He beat Joe Lozon again by decision. Before that, he lost to Nate Diaz with the guillotine choke. Like I said, good grappler, good BJJ guy. Before that, he beat Melvin Gillard with a rear naked choke. Before that, he lost to Benson Henderson by decision. Beat Kamal Shalors. He beat Charles Oliveira by knee bar. Before that, he beat Gleason Tabao. Mark Bocek. He beat Dwayne Ludwig with an armbar. Dwayne Ludwig, TJ Dillashaw's coach. Beat Steve Lopez, Mac Danzig. Before that, he lost to Gray Maynard by decision. He only didn't get TKO'd. The guy who dropped Frankie Edgar 4 times in one round. Before that, he beat Matt Wyman. Before that, that was the guy I was talking about like 2 videos ago. When you make bad decisions after a break, Matt Wyman was the dude who tried to jump guillotine and got knocked out. David Barron, he submitted by rear naked choke. Bart Palasuski, before the UFC, he had a decision. Also before the UFC, submission, doctor stoppage, submission, lost the decision to Frankie Edgar outside the UFC. That's crazy. Before that, he had a triangle choke against James Jones, armbar win, arm triangle win, rear naked choke win, then a decision win. Wow, he fought Frankie freaking Edgar in his 6th fight in 2006. So if you hear those names, those are crazy names. Mark Bocek must have been at 170. Holy crud. Dwayne Ludwig, because he was fighting at 170 back then against Dan Hardy. So Jim Miller, the wealth of experience, so well-rounded, so durable. His last 6 losses were all just decisions. Before that, he got rear naked choked by Charles Oliveira, and before that, he got KO'd by Dan Hooker. And before that, more decisions, baby. More decisions. 4 more decisions. So he's very hard to finish. He's very, very hard to finish. Jared Gordon, so he's 21-8. He's coming off a loss over Rafa Garcia, TKO elbows. He beat Thiago Moises before that with a KO punches. He lost to Nasrat Hakparas by split decision before that. He beat Marco Madsen before that. He lost to Paddy Pimblett before that. He beat Leonardo Santos before that. And he lost to Grant Dawson before that. Beat Joe Selecki before that, split decision. Beat Danny Chavez. Beat Chris Fishgold, both decisions, unanimous. Lost to Charles Oliveira. KO'd him, so that makes sense. Before that, he beat Dan Moret. Before that, he lost to Joaquim Silva and Diego Ferreira, who aren't great. Before that, he did beat Hakran Diaz, Michel Quinones, Bill Algio, Dawand, Pickney, Anthony Morrison, and those last 3 were outside the UFC. He is also fairly hard to finish. I think Jim Miller could rock him for sure. I think Jared Gordon can maybe use his jab and kind of stay on the outside, not really let Jim Miller get too close for grappling and stuff, and that'd be a good strategy. But I think overall, he's just like not the most powerful, not the fastest, not the most technical. So all that being said, that gives Jim Miller a really good shot to be in the fight, stay in the fight, and the longer he's in a fight, the more chance he has of winning a fight. You have to really like outwork him the whole time, or just be like way better to beat Jim Miller. So that being said, Rafa Garcia, he has 2 KOs or TKOs out of 19 wins. So if you're the guy he finishes with elbows, it's not the best look, So Jared Gordon, that's not great. Everything else kind of points towards Jim Miller just being like way more experienced, better, even though he's older. That's really the one thing going against Jim Miller and going for Jared Gordon. Yeah, I'm going to say Jim Miller for sure. I'm going to say round 2 rear naked choke. Moving on from there, we got Grant Dawson versus Mateusz Rebecki. Grant Dawson's pretty good. He's 23-3 with 1 draw. He's coming off a TKO loss to Manuel Torres, who's not the worst, Manuel Torres is not the worst person to lose by a TKO to, because he gets a good amount of TKOs and KOs, you know what I mean? So it's not the worst thing overall, especially if you're more of a grappler. It is kind of understandable. Mateusz Rebecki, 20-4. But out of the 20-4, he's coming off of 2 losses. A big part of me wants to say I think Mateusz Rebecki is going to have the grappling to meet Grant Dawson and kind of stall him out. And then maybe it'll become more of a striking fight where Mateusz might have a little bit more of an advantage. But I think Grant Dawson's going to be a little bit too good in the transitions of the grappling. And I think maybe round 1, that's what's going to happen. I think maybe round 2, Grant Dawson's going to take him down and kind of like get to a good dominant position. I'd say round 2 or 3 sub by Grant Dawson. It's kind of a tough one to pick, I think. Next up, we got Joel Alvarez versus Yaroslav Amoslav. So in this one, it is pretty interesting. So Joel Alvarez is at 170 now. He did lose to Arman Sarukian at 155. He's pretty well versed in the submissions. That backfired against Arman Sarukian because he wasn't that worried about getting taken down, it kind of looked like. And then it backfired heavily, and he got his butt whooped. Since then, he's kind of upped his striking game. So he's only had 1 fight at 170, but he did beat Vicente Luque, who's a great name. And he's 23-3 overall, which is pretty good. Meanwhile, we got Yaroslav Amosov, who's 29-1 overall, but he's only had one fight in the UFC. It was against Neil Magny. He did win by anaconda choke, but he did get KO'd just 3 fights ago by Jason Jackson in Bellator. Yoel Alvarez lost to Arman Sarukian. Other than that, his grappling's looked okay. He's bigger now. He moved up. That being said, Yaroslav naturally should just be the bigger fighter. I'm going to trust in Joel Alvarez. He started his career with so many submissions that I'm going to trust in his ability to not end up in one. When I started with MMA, I had some wrestling experience already and Taekwondo. So when I first went to an MMA gym and started doing Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the hardest part about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was like knowing when you were in danger before it was like too late. So I focused heavy on just not getting submitted, just be kind of defensive and try to just get to like a decent neutral position like guard or something. I think that really helped me later become a lot better at finishing people because I could tell once you were in a position that you weren't safe. Having that grappling background to start and now being a striker a little bit more so bodes well. Now, will he get like wrestled and dominated in the wrestling department by Yaroslav? Maybe. But Yaroslav's got a lot of decisions, so he's not really he's not finishing people in Bellator. You're probably not finishing people in the UFC at a higher rate, I mean, I guess he is because he 100% finish rate against Neil Magny only, but you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think Yaroslav definitely could do it, but I'm going to lean with Joel Alvarez to get like a 3-round decision on damage, even though he ended up on the ground a good amount, Moving on from there, we got the main event of the prelims, Ateba Gutierrez versus Ozzy Diaz. Going to start with Osman Diaz. He's 10-3. Coming off a win over DeJordan Santos, who we just talked about. He's fighting by Sanger Susurkayev earlier in the card. Osman Diaz coming off a win over him. Unanimous decision. Before that, he lost to Mingying Zhang, elbow TKO. He lost on Dana White Contender Series to Joe Pyfer, TKO. He's a little bit susceptible to getting knocked out or TKO'd, especially if you've got that type of power. Ateba Gutierrez, meanwhile, 10-1. His one loss is like a split decision from earlier in his career. And since then, TKO, TKO win, TKO win, KO win with a head kick, TKO punches, TKO punches, KO punches a knee. That's Jose Medina. That's UFC. His debut. And then after that, Robert Valentini TKO'd. Tristan Vines, KO, elbow and punches. And then Andre Pulaev, decision, unanimous. Now, the Andre Pulaev fight was pretty good. Crazy start, but Andre Pulaev used that jab and kind of like leg kick, teep, to kind of claw his way back into somewhat of a competitive fight. I would give him probably the 3rd round, maybe. I'd have to rewatch it, but it was a pretty good fight overall. The first round was very dominant. Dropped him like 3 times. So I'm going to say Ateba's probably going to knock out Ozzy Diaz just because I don't think Ozzy Diaz is going to be able to withstand the power once he gets hit. I think it's kind of going to be game over. Pulaev, I gave a little bit more credit to be able to circle, but I mean, this guy's been knocked out by Mingying Zhang, Joe Pyfer, and Santiago Diaz outside of the UFC. So, not the best. I mean, Joe Pyfer hits hard. So if you're getting TKO'd by Joe Pyfer, it's really not the worst. But Mingying Zhang, TKO, it's not the worst fighter ever, but it's not the best look going into an Ateba Gutierrez fight. So you just got to go with Ateba. Ozzy's just chin is too susceptible to damage. Moving on from there, we got the opener of the main card, which is Jeremy Stephens versus Bobby Green. So this one's going to be taking place at lightweight, whereas Jeremy Stephens fought a good amount of his career, most of his career at featherweight. Bobby Green is 34-17 with 1 draw and 1 no contest. Coming off a pretty good TKO win over Daniel Zellhuber and a split decision over Lance Gibson, which was he arguably lost that one. And then before that, he got wheel kicked by Mauricio Huffy. Before that, he got triangle choked by Patty. Before that, he beat Jim Miller in a decision, which he needed. And before that, he got hard knocked out by Jalen Turner. He has submission wins, he has TKO wins, he has submission losses, he has TKO losses. So, he has decision wins, he has decision losses. I mean, he's all over the place, but he's fought everyone. His KD's not very good, but it's better than Jeremy Stephens, who's 29-22. You know, Bobby Green was on a 2-fight win streak, and before that, a 2-fight loss streak. Jeremy Stephens is on a 2-fight loss streak. Before that, 1 win, and then before that, 7-fight no-win streak. 4 losses, a no contest against Yair, and then 2 more losses. He went to bare knuckle. He debuted at bare knuckle. Won against Jimmy Rivera, doctor stoppage, and then later secured a win over Eddie Alvarez, and then he lost to Mike Perry. Did pretty good, beat Eddie Alvarez and beat that other guy, then lost to Mike Perry, who's obviously way bigger, like not even close. He's going to have the power, and if Bobby Green eats one clean, it might be over. I'm going to regret this, but I just don't feel like thinking about it too much anymore. It could go either way. Lil Heathen, Jeremy Stephens against King Bobby Green. I'm going to go Lil Heathen. Moving on from there, that was a fun one. But next up, we got Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley. Joaquin Buckley, pretty good, but glaring weakness to grappling. Sean Brady, pretty good, but glaring weakness to strikers. Sean Brady got TKO'd by Bilal. That's how bad his striking can be. Just got TKO'd by Michael Morales in round 1. Before that, Sean Brady did beat Leon Edwards by guillotine. He did beat Gilbert Burns by unanimous. He did sub Kelvin Gastelum with the Kimura, but I mean, that's not that impressive. He got TKO'd by Bilal. He's 18-2. He got TKO'd by Michael Morales' his last fight, and he got TKO'd by Bilal Muhammad in 2022. Meanwhile, Joaquin Buckley, kind of similar. Lost to Kevin Holland early, kind of turned it around and started to improve. You know, started to do a little bit better against his opponents and get back on a win streak. But he's coming off a loss to Kamaru Usman from the grappling. Now, if Kamaru Usman wasn't going to finish Leon Edwards in the grappling, but Sean Brady did, does that mean that Sean Brady's just going to destroy Joaquin Buckley in the grappling? Not necessarily, because Kamaru Usman has way better striking to kind of close that gap. Sean Brady kind of has to just shoot for it. But if we look at Joaquin Buckley, he's coming off a loss to Kamaru, a win, TKO over Colby, a KO over Stephen Thompson, decision over Nursultan Ruzaboev, TKO over Vicente Luque, decision over Alex Morono, which isn't great, TKO over Andre Fialho. He got KO'd by Chris Curtis, decision by Nasruddin Imavov, who's, you know, about to challenge for the title. And that's kind of what convinced him to drop weight classes. I think Kamaru is kind of a really bad matchup for Joaquin because he has the punching power to hurt him, he has the technique to land it, and he has the grappling to just totally shut him down once he gets there. Sean Brady, he barely even tried to grapple Michael Morales because it was just over before it started. I could see Sean Brady holding him down and just winning by decision or submission, but I'm going to go Joaquin Buckley to get this one done. I think Sean Brady was talked about a little bit too early because he only lost to Bilal. Moving on from there, we got Alexander Volkov versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. I love Alexander Volkov. He should be getting a title shot over Cyril Gane right now. Waldo Cortez Acosta clearly has the power differential in his hands. I feel like this is going to be kind of similar to Derek Lewis versus Alexander Volkov. But that being said, Alexander Volkov has gone against some heavy hitters since then. Just won a decision against Jailton Almeida, split decision, lay and pray, boring. Right? Before that, he lost a split decision to Cyril Gane, but everyone knows he won. So, like, he won both of those. He clearly pieced Cyril Gane up. Cyril Gane is not the most powerful puncher, but he's definitely a talented striker, so that's tough to win regardless. But before that, he fought Sergey Pavlovich, a power puncher, and he beat him on the feet for 3 rounds, just made it look easy. Sergey didn't throw any punches. It was crazy. Before that, he fought Tai Tuivasa and subbed him in the 2nd round. Before that, fought Alexander Romanov. Before that, he TKO'd Jairzinho Rosenstrike. So if we go up to Volkov, his entire record, he's had 50 fights, 39-11. He has 24 KOs or TKOs, 4 subs, and 11 decision wins. But that being said, Waldo Cortez Acosta is the kind of guy that's like the worst matchup for him. He has a ton of power in his hands, and he just kind of walks down and throws that power. So that is Alexander Volkov's hardest matchup. Waldo Cortez Acosta is coming off a TKO over Derek Lewis, a KO over Shamil Gaziev, who maybe isn't the most durable we see, a KO over Ante Delia, a decision loss to Sergey Pavlovich. So this is what's giving me hope right here. They're not the most impressive names. Man, Ante Delia is all right. Shamil Gaziev is all right. Not the most durable. Derek Lewis, kind of the same thing, right? So does Waldo really hit that hard? Maybe he doesn't. I could be sad at the result of this one, but I'm going to go Alexander Volkov by decision probably. But I could see him getting a sub in this one just to kind of show that he has it again, you know? Because he does like to show that he does have some grappling. I think because he's kind of been held down and kind of lost those fights in the past. So I think he likes to show, you know, I'm working on it, you know? I'm working on it. So I'm going to go Alexander Volkov. That's a tough one, though. And I'm going to go decision. Moving on from there, we got the co-main event, Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira. I'm going to go Taira. Taira is a great grappler. Van has very little grappling. Now, if Van actually had to fight Alejandro Pantoja and actually won like a full fight, then you'd believe in his grappling a lot more. But the way the fight went down is he just kind of caught the kick and he fell on it. Now, Taira is pretty well-rounded, but his striking's not where it's, you know, that's not the best part of his game. He TKO'd Brandon Moreno, but it was on the ground. It was from his back. He neck cranked Hyun Sung Park. He lost a decision to Brandon Royval, which that gives me a lot of faith in Joshua Van to maybe be able to get it done. But before that, he destroyed Alex Perez's knee. Before that, he TKO'd Carlos Hernandez, Edgar Chairez, Jesus Santos Aguiar, and CJ Vergara, all in the UFC. And then before that was his UFC debut against Carlos Candero, who he won a decision against. Before the UFC, he was undefeated. So his one loss is to Brandon Royval. He's 18-1. Brandon Royval is a great striker, especially like in like a war, he's like the perfect guy to lose a split decision war to, right? But Joshua Van, more of a finisher, more of a power puncher, more of a finisher than Brandon Royval. Joshua Van just beat Alejandro Pantoja by arm injury, but before that, he also won a decision, unanimous though, against Brandon Royval, whereas Taira lost a split decision. Before the Brandon Royval fight, Joshua Van beat Bruno Silva by TKO, Ray Soria by decision, Cody Durden by decision, Edgar Chairez by decision, lost to Charles Johnson by KO, TKO'd Felipe Boons, decision Kevin Borjas, split decision against Zalgis Zumagulov, and then before that he was outside of the UFC where he was 7-1, with his one loss being a rear naked choke. The thing with Joshua Van is he hasn't done MMA very long. He's only 24. He's only been fighting since 2020. So he's only like, you know, I'll say 7-8 years total in the game. But he's only been fighting for 6. So he's 16-2. He has one loss, KO by Charles Johnson. And then he has one loss, rear naked choke early in his career. So maybe he learned after that first choke, he learned a lot about how to defend and stuff. His last loss was a little while ago, like a 6-fight win streak since his loss. Tatsuro Taira's only on a 2-fight win streak since his loss, but it was a closer fight. It was a split decision, you know. But against a guy that Joshua Van unanimous decisioned. On the feet, Joshua Van will have a striking advantage. Grappling is going to be heavily favored to Tatsuro Taira. The one thing I'm going to say for Joshua Van is he's so short that does kind of help with your grappling. It's harder to get stretched out and flattened out the smaller your limbs are and the tighter and more compact your torso is. So I really think Tatsuro Taira is going to win, unfortunately. But I hope Joshua Van wins. I hope we get a nice stand-up TKO or KO by Joshua Van. But Tatsuro Taira is a great grappler, and I wouldn't be surprised if he won this one. So I am going to go with Tatsuro Taira. I think Brandon Royval is a better grappler than Joshua Van on average. So I'm going to have to go with Tatsuro Taira to take the championship off of Joshua Van, who really should have never been the champion because the Pantoja fight was kind of dumb. That being said, if Van wins, can we please get that Pantoja rematch? Or if Taira wins, can we get Pantoja versus Van at some point?